Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host Paul Rook and we are exclusive to the Paranormal UK radio network. As always, we are joined by the stupendous Kerry Greenaway and Richard Clements. Hello guys.
Hello.
Hello. What have you been up to this week?
Oh, well, I've actually been out on a little road trip. I thought I'd best get out whilst we still can. Because the way things are going. But, yes, I actually crossed the border over into Suffolk, a favourite part of the world.
At Ring, we reinvented the doorbell. And now we're changing the way you look at whole home protection with Ring security cameras.
Wait, Ring does cameras too?
That's right. And they're so versatile, you can put them inside or outside, wherever you need them most.
Handy.
Ring cameras let you see, hear and speak to anyone inside or outside your home. And you can control them all from the Ring app to keep you and your family connected and protected.
Now that is smart.
Ring. Smart security made simple. Learn more at ring.com.
Tend to try and get to. And I sort of went up and visited Dunwich and just drove down the coast and visited Leiston Abbey as well. So there's a couple of places we've been before. So I just thought I'd go and check that they're okay, still there. So, yep.
No one's moved them.
No, they're not moved. They're still pretty much as we left them the last time.
Fantastic.
Good.
Yeah. And what have you been up to, Kerry?
I went to the cinema, is what I did.
That's not like you.
I know, very novel experience, wearing a mask through the whole shebang. No, I thought it was very good, actually. I thought they dealt with it really, really well. And the film I saw blew my mind. Didn't get it. It was well done in regards to how they filmed it and the CGI side of it, but I don't know, it was time travel, jumping backwards and forwards, and some of it was forward action and some of it was backwards action, and it was all a bit bizarre, but it was good. It was good.
Time travel has that effect on you, though, doesn't it?
It does blow my mind, I'm not going to lie. It is one of those concepts where I just can't get.
Do you still have trouble with Back to the Future, though?
No, because that's brilliant.
Okay.
I love that. Those films are great.
That still brings the concept of paradoxes into play.
Well, it might do, but that's a good, wholesome American kind of. You don't overthink it. Whereas I think with this one, you do kind of have to think.
It's one of those pointless movies, though, isn't it?
In regards to?
Well, the whole story, obviously, is Marty McFly goes back in time, interferes with his parents' meeting, and he slowly disappears with the rest of the family in his photograph.
Yeah.
And obviously he's got to get his mum and dad to kiss at the dance and stuff. Well, it's a pointless movie because if he'd just done nothing and interfered with his mum and dad meeting and he'd just done nothing and he disappeared, he wouldn't be in the future to come back in time to interfere. So it'd just revert back to the normal way it all happened.
Well, there you go.
God, you really overthink things, don't you?
No, it's just the way it is, isn't it?
I have to say, when I watched Back to the Future, that kind of didn't even occur to me.
If he raises himself from the future, he's not in the future to come back in time to interfere with his dad perving on his mum.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
so therefore it reverts back to him not being there, and then they'd still meet and they'd have him again anyway. So the whole film's pointless.
Oh, okay, whatever.
Oh,
It's time travel, for God's sakes. It's all ifs and wins and ifs and maybes, and I still think we shouldn't be thinking about doing it. It's far too much.
Anyway, that's another show.
I look forward to that one.
No, I won't be on that one.
Yes.
It just...
You should. You should be on that one because it'll blow your mind.
Oh, it does on a regular basis whenever you... Because you like that topic. I can't stand it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. It throws up so many ideas and so many theories. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me ghosts and spirits any day.
Yeah, ghosties and ghoulies and things that go bump in the night for Kerry.
Yeah, definitely.
and yeah, I mean, this week for today's show, we decided to look at bells. Now, Kerry was like, "Oh, because you get all your history from films and stuff, you research from films. Go and watch a film because it's got our topic, which are bells." Tonight's show, it's got one of the bells we're going to be talking about in the film. I was like, okay, so what film's that? Was it National Treasure, Book of Secrets? And so I was like, all right then, I'll watch that. It was the wrong one, Kerry.
It was the wrong film. Yeah, funny that, wasn't it?
Hilarious.
They're messaging me going, which the bell?
Going,
what bell?
There's no bells in this yet.
It was the first one, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. It was the first one.
That's all wise.
I think you should just crack on and do the show.
So I've made them watch 2 films this weekend, basically.
Yeah,
because
right.
the first one wasn't the right film. But bells, it's an interesting concept, and not necessarily, wouldn't necessarily link bells to paranormal, would you, right?
No, not generally, no.
Except...
I think going back to the Victorian period, they used bells in seances. As for doing investigations and stuff nowadays, not many people use bells.
They don't, but maybe they should.
Oh. I think they should. I mean, I've done an investigation on the 12th of September, and the location actually had a bell there because they do seances as part of the location, and I was using their bell because it's in the location. So if it's got a connection to it, it's already there, sort of thing. So yeah, we used the bell for that thing, but no, I don't generally use a bell.
It's not something you would necessarily link to the paranormal, yet the more I looked at this, the more relevant it seemed. Because how often do we go out when we do road trips and stuff like that? We always end up at a church.
Well, of course,
yeah,
don't we? And every church had a bell. And the history on this is absolutely fascinating to me, to be fair, because bells in particular have long been associated with religious rites. Okay, so they would use the bell to call people to prayer. Basically, that's how they would do it, and they would commemorate important events, and excuse the children in the background. So they're very entwined with our history and our culture, without even necessarily people associating that with the paranormal. But there are loads and loads of accounts of where bells have been integral in the paranormal occurrence. So the different connotations that bells bring in. So I thought we'd take a look at this tonight, because you can approach this from so many different angles. And believe you me, I was quite astonished by how much information there was about bells linked to the paranormal.
I actually found out something I found really interesting, actually. Bells are written about in the Old Testament, in the Bible.
Yeah.
And it says the bells are first mentioned in the Bible during a description of the high priest's robes. Exodus instructs that the bells of God were to be attached to the hem of the high priest's robe, so that people could hear the priest as he entered and exited the Holy of Holies, which is basically like a church and temple, but it housed things like the Ark of the Covenant. And by biblical law, it only allowed the high priest to enter the Holy of Holies once a year, basically, on the Day of Atonement, to make offerings for the sins of God's people. If the high priest did not precisely follow the biblical law, he didn't basically purify himself. So what he had to do was have the bell attached to the hem of his outfit, or tied around the waist with a rope. That's why monks have rope around the middle as well. So that if anything happened to the priest, the bells would stop ringing, and the people knew then that they had to drag him out by the rope.
Ooh.
Ooh, creepy.
I thought that was really interesting.
That is quite creepy, isn't it, actually?
Yeah.
It is, and that's sort of why they progressed with the bells. Obviously, in modern times, it's more to do with the church is open,
come forth and pray.
Come forth. Yeah.
So that's sort of the origin-ish.
Yes, because the church
because there's no basis other than it being written in the Bible. There's no actually factual basis.
Yeah, because now
it's just written in the Bible, so they go with that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bells in churches, yeah, because they practice by the church in me every Wednesday night between 8 and 9. I have bell ringing coming through my flat. It's quite nice, really.
It is an art form as well, isn't it, bell ringing?
Yes,
it's called campanology, isn't it?
I know that's the study of bells.
That's the study of bells. My mother used to be a bell ringer way back when, and yes, it was, she used to ring a peal of 6 bells. Not by herself, but in her church there was 6, and it's quite a from what she was saying, it's quite an art form to get and to get right, and
I don't think many people listen to bells these days. I actually know someone who's got a bell for tea, and when she rings it, no one replies.
No one actually comes to give her tea.
Yeah, so
funny that
it is, isn't it?
We've gone off on a tangent here. I wasn't expecting. So, okay. So bells give you a resonance, don't they? They have when you ring a bell, a big, like any kind of bell, it has a sort of resonance, doesn't it? So, and we've always spoken in regards to the paranormal in terms of like energy, frequency, and vibration, and bells give you 2 of those. They give you a frequency and they give you a vibration, don't they?
Yes, and
absolutely. I think that's sort of another theory that, obviously, as an investigator, you look into the whole vibrations and stuff of spirit energy. So could that have an effect? It's just a concept that I don't think many investigators think about, so they don't do it. But maybe that's something that some teams might want to bring in.
Exactly. I think it's important, actually, because, like we talk about whether or not a spirit would actually be able to, we've got all this tech and stuff, and the argument is they won't know what that is. They might be scared by that because they've never come across that piece of tech before in their life because they lived in the 1800s and it weren't invented then. And whereas the bell has been prevalent through history for a very long time. So it's a tool that you could use that they would recognise and know there's no danger to it, as it were. Do you know what I mean? It's within their frame of reference.
I think even today, and you hear a bell ring, you know what it is. I mean, it sort of crosses all time, doesn't it?
It does. I just think it.
Normally my alarm clock.
Yeah. Or I have a little.
Throw it.
My little tea bell. It's a tea bell, not a gin ring for gin bell.
See, and have all the listeners just noticed then how no one come down to speak to Gary about the bell.
Yeah, and also you think about houses, old manor houses. They used to have bells, didn't they, that were attached for the servants down in the servants' hall. So you'd pull a string and it would go to a bell in the servants' quarters to alert them to come and serve them.
Absolutely. Call for the butler and things like that.
Yeah, call for the butler.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is a vast history of bells, and they're across culture. So we're not just talking about Western. We're talking about East Asia. Literally everywhere knows bells. Basically, there are different types of bells that you can get, different shapes. Chinese bells are often very lotus shaped with different rims. You can get all sorts of, round ones, square ones, elliptical ones, many sided, all sorts of things out there.
Didn't the Victorians have them put on tombs? Like the family tombs. they had bells put on so that if they had a fear of being put in there alive.
Yeah.
So if they ever come round and woke up in the tent, they could ring the bell
Yeah.
from inside. And also, there was an adaptation to that as well, because I think there was coffins made with a little bell tower on the outside. So if they woke up inside the coffin, they could pull a little string and it rang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And an example of that was on the movie The Great Train Robbery.
Ooh. I've not seen that film.
And that's where the terminology, I believe, a dead ringer comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bells are well in deep in our psyche in regards to culture, and as I say, this goes across the world. It's not just in the UK; it goes everywhere. Now, mostly they are linked to religion, aren't they?
Yeah.
But in other cultures, they have different definitions and cultural status. So, in some cultures, they are said to induce rain or dissolve storm clouds.
Yes, that's right. I've often heard that before, particularly, this is why some churches, it's suggested that that's why they're in high towers, to sort of ward off a particular sort of atmospheric sort of disturbances, light storms and stuff like that.
Is it just to attract the lightning, though, so it doesn't hit anything more prominent?
Oh, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. That's something that came out of my brain. Might be wrong.
Yeah.
Who knows? Lots of things that come out of my brain are wrong these days. They're said to thwart demons when worn as amulets, or if they place on bells like cowbells, things like that. They're supposed to thwart demons.
Yeah,
Right.
even church bells. That was another one that I read about, church bells. But obviously, they want the congregation to go into the church, but it would basically chuck out any demons.
Which is good, right, when you're going to the church?
Absolutely. And like with, I think it was Buddhism and Christianity, bells were consecrated for being used.
They were.
And the bell was also considered spiritually significant in Roman
Catholicism.
Catholicism.
Because they symbolise paradise or the voice of God.
That's
so again,
right.
that's sort of another
Goes back to what you were
religious
sort of saying.
undertone there.
Yeah, and also it goes kind of back to what you were saying about the guy who had it on his hem. If he's the voice of God and he's got that power, as it were, then that's going to get rid of all the nasties, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, they're supposed to be very
depends
purifying. The sound of a
It depends
bell.
on how badly they played as well.
Well, there is that. The sound of a bell is supposed to be very purifying as well in rituals and stuff like that. And in China, they reckon that to ring bells is to communicate directly with spirit.
Oh, right, that's interesting.
It's fascinating, isn't it, when you start looking at this?
I like Tubular Bells. That was quite good.
Mike Oldfield, good album that.
It was a good
I
album.
can see where you're coming from, Kerry. It's that resonant. Everything seems to be going back to sort of resonance, and this is something that does come up in the paranormal theory sort of side of it. That this could possibly be sort of being created on a different sort of frequency, for want of a better word, and perhaps a well-made bell or a bell attuned to such a thing can actually cross that divide.
Oh, who knows, right?
Exactly.
Who knows indeed. Bells have also been used as patriotic symbols, war trophies, and also, because you think about the Vikings, right? When Vikings rode over, they would go straight for the bell tower because they wanted it silenced, because they didn't want it as a warning to other people. So they'd go and basically conquer the bell tower. So it was a symbol of their conquering. That's wrong terminology, completely right there, but
They're pillaging.
They're pillaging. They got the bell.
Yeah.
So.
But as you say, Kerry, they were considered war trophies. They would be taken back and paraded through the streets. Or what you also have to consider, bells themselves, they were sort of back in the day were made of bronze and stuff, which is a very valuable metal. So they would be quite highly sought after, and sort of like to strip a church of its bells to go and melt them down. You would have a fair bit of money in the kitty, in your war chest to continue.
Very much so.
I think, wasn't it during World War One or two, the churches were asked to surrender all their bells but one.
Yeah.
To be melted down for war machinery, whether it be guns or tanks or whatever they wanted it for.
Yeah, because there was such a shortage, wasn't there? A metal shortage. So everyone was giving up their pots and pans and their railings and bells and all sorts of things were given up. So, yeah. But let's start sort of where we all sort of first kind of came across bells in our childhood. And that would be with a nursery rhyme or a song, wouldn't it?
Yes. You're not going to get...
I vaguely remember it. But,
you vaguely remember it, do you? I'm not going to sing it, you'll be pleased to know. Now, this is the version... this is the version that I kind of knew, and I didn't realise there were other versions of it. But this is oranges and lemons, say the bells of St. Clement's. You owe me 5 farthings, say the bells of St. Martin's. When will you pay me, say the bells of Old Bailey. When I grow rich, say the bells of Shoreditch. When will that be, say the Stepney. I do not know, say the great bells of Bow. Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Pancakes and fritters, say the bells of St. Peter's. So this is the second bit, I didn't know. 2 sticks and an apple, say the bells of Whitechapel. Old Father Baldgate, say snow bells of Folgate. Pokers and tongues, say the bells of St. John's. Kettle and pans, say the bells of St. Anne's. Brickbats and tiles, say the bells of St. Giles. Here comes a candle to light you to bed.
Well, there you go.
I found that fascinating, actually, because I always thought the first bit was just about if you was in the East End, those were the bells you would hear.
Yes, I think that is probably the modern interpretation of it, because they are all sort of East End, aren't they, of London, and I thought it was some sort of Cockney sort of song, sort of Cockney rhyme. But as you look down and go into the second bit you recounted, yes, it certainly sort of says a lot more, doesn't it, about London at the time.
It does. It sort of outlines sort of the areas of what you would find if you was to go to that sort of area of London, like trades and stuff that were prevalent at the time. Now, everyone thinks this is like really old, but it first dates back. They can first trace it back to 1744, and it was first published in a book called Tom Thumb's Pretty Songbook. They think it was in publication, or no, not publication, circulation for some time before then. And there is a reference to a square dance which goes back to 1665, but they're not sure if that relates to the same thing. What is clear is the song we know was the same as a bell peal. So they think that people made it up because that's what the bell peal song was, if that makes sense. So if you think how the song goes, then that would be how the bell would ring, quite frankly.
If you have a set of bells, they appeal, ding dong, ding dong, ding 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 dong. Yeah.
Well done,
yes,
Richard.
There you go.
We'll make a doorbell out of you, Rich.
Yes. And there's a career path I can think of.
Yeah.
And there are 2 or 3 different versions of this particular one. So I've read out sort of like the main one. I'm not going to read out the other 2, but there are a couple of other ones where there's different replacements. It's sort of like that. But it does tell you roughly what kind of area you would find certain trades, because believe it or not, certain things used to kind of hit certain boroughs.
Yes, I mean, certain sort of areas would be known for certain sort of manufacturing areas, like, let's go back and have a look, sort of brickbats and brickbat and tiles, is it?
More industrial would be more like around the docks, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So kettles and pans, say the bells of St Anne's. So wherever this St Anne's church is located, it probably had a kettles and pans in an industry.
Yeah, steelworks and stuff like that. Yeah. So it is quite relevant in that, which is I found fascinating because when we'll come on to one of them in particular, it kind of tells you that it's absolutely fascinating when you start looking at it. Like the bullseyes and targets tells us about archery practice that happened in the fields at St Margaret's in Lothbury.
Oh, I like the pokers and tongues at St John's. that references hideous forms of torture that took place in the buildings.
Yeah, in the Tower of London specifically. Yeah. So it references the torture that used to go on in the Tower of London and stuff like that, and the bells that you would hear if you were in that area. So I find it absolutely fascinating. Now, one of the lines is, "Here comes the candle to light you to bed, here comes the chopper to chop off your head." Now, this they think this refers to the practices at Newgate Prison.
Oh, we've done a show about
that.
Funnily enough, we did do a show on that, which is actually kind of where this all started from, this bells, foray into bells. Now, we know that that's in now the Old Bailey, which is next to St Sepulchre's Church. Mm-hmm. And the bells of the Old Bailey are in the rhyme.
Yeah.
Okay. So the sound of the church's great tenor bell striking at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning would actually signal the start of hangings. Do you remember we talked about that?
Yes, they were sort of have a hanging week or something, wouldn't they? They'd put them all into batches, wouldn't they? And and this would be started by the bell. Oh dear, imagine hearing that.
Yeah. Now, the prisoners on death row were visited the night before by a bellman of St Sepulchre. Now, he would hold a candle in one hand and ring the execution bell in the other. Now, he would recite a poem, right? Now, this is the poem. Oh, this is horrible. "All you that in the condemned hole do lie, prepare you for tomorrow you shall die. Watch all and pray, the hour is drawing near, that you before Almighty God will appear. Examine well yourselves, in time repent, that you not to eternal flames be sent. And when St Sepulchre's bell tomorrow tolls, the Lord above have mercy on your souls."
Yeah, giving chance for the people to repent in the condemned cells, basically, isn't it?
And he used to do 12 chimes from the handbell at the stroke of midnight, and this is where the death knell comes from.
Oh, right.
You know, we talk about the death, death knell and that, but that is where this comes from. All this happened at Newgate Prison with the bell. Now, you can still see this bell.
Yes, because it's still on display in the church, isn't it?
It is. It's on display in the Church of St Sepulchre in London. You wouldn't necessarily think it's anything special. It's quite old and dusty. It's in a very old cabinet that's sort of like locked away. You can see it, but you would, unless you knew what it was, you kind of probably wouldn't really.
I've seen photographs of it, and I will post them up on the Facebook page. It looks quite an unwieldy sort of thing, You know, it doesn't look anything macabre as such, but it looks like quite an unwieldy type of bell. But there you go.
It's the history that's associated with it that makes it macabre, doesn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, when we did the Newgate show, this led us down a little rabbit hole, and we did say we were going to come back to this topic at some point. So here we are, talking about bells and all things bells, really. So let's talk about one of the biggest bells. That's the bell of Big Ben.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah, it is. Most famous one, I would have thought.
I would think so. Yeah, they're quite iconic, Big Ben, isn't it?
He's having a bit of a rest now, though, isn't it?
It is having a bit of a rest. It's going under the building, isn't it? Going under refurbishment at the moment.
Yeah, it's been silent now for quite a while. I think they only ring it on special occasions now, like New Year's Eve and Remembrance Sunday. I think they do fire it up.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I think it has been silent now for about 3 years. So we are coming to the end of the refurbishment.
Now, everyone seems to think that, when you see Big Ben, it's a massive clock tower. And everyone refers to that as Big Ben, but that's not. It's actually the Elizabeth Tower. It used to be called the Clock Tower, and then it was renamed as Elizabeth Tower in 2012. It's actually the bell inside it that is called Big Ben, because he's a big boy. He's a big old bell. Now, they think it was named after Sir Benjamin Hall, who was the first Commissioner for Works. Now, that's his name is inscribed on the bell, but other people like to think that it was named after a guy called Ben Court, who was a champion heavyweight boxer.
So, that sounds more Willick, doesn't it, really? I much prefer the heavyweight boxer sort of.
I do too, but I kind of think it's going to be a bit more pompous than that, and it's going to be the first Commissioner for Works, to be fair.
Yeah, Benjamin would have been upset if he didn't. That legacy to hand down to us all.
Now, Warners of Norton, near Stockton-on-Tees, actually cast a bell for the tower in 1856, and the bell was originally meant to be called the Royal Victoria. Now, it arrived in London by barge, taken across Westminster Bridge, drawn by 16 white horses. Fantastic, right? Big ceremony. It cracked during testing.
I thought it'd be a big ceremony.
Yeah. But then they sort of got it in place, and it cracked.
Cracked. Yeah, cracked. Wasn't any good.
Which is quite a theme in these bells. They seem to be quite delicate things, don't they?
They have to
not
be
cast correctly.
Oh, they have to be very specific. I mean, the cracking of a bell is very prevalent in what we're going to carry on talking about, because the second replacement bell, the second one, was cast by George Mears at the London Whitechapel Foundry in 1858. However, that cracked too. Now, what they solved it did. They solved the problem when the bell was turned a quarter clockwise and chimed with a lighter hammer. So it could be like the size of bell with hammer, because the hammer is the bit that rings the bell from inside. And
the crack is what gives it its unique chime.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it a lot dull. More dull than,
so that is the bell that is still there today, then.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is still the bell that's there, basically. It's a big old bell, this one. I mean, it's not little.
Yeah, as I say, I've never been up in the clock tower. I would love to go. You can do tours up there, I believe. But
yeah, I was about to say, actually, if you wanted to go up the tower, I think it's only open for the British people, and you have to apply through the Houses of Parliament, I think it is.
Oh, right.
So it's free to go in as well. All you just need is to ask them to let you in, basically, and they'll arrange it. But it's free, and it's as far as I'm aware, it's just for the British people.
Oh,
right. So
I can
imagine the waiting list for that must be quite long, though.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
And probably not at the moment because they're refurbing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Once it's up and running, I mean that's what it was going back a few years. I mean, I don't know whether they've updated it to be not so much selective anymore, but that's how it used to be.
Interesting. I didn't know that at all. Now, this sent me off down a little tangent, to be fair, because in my little brain I heard Whitechapel.
Well, we all know what that means, don't we?
Mm-hmm. We do. Now, that particular area of London was very poor, and a lot of trades, the smelly trades, shall we say, used to be in that area. So you would find tanneries, foundries, you'd find butchers, because the smell, anything that was
candlestick makers,
anything that was stinky, basically ended up in that East End Whitechapel area of London. And that's why the Whitechapel Foundry ended up where it was. Now, I did, of course, try to find a link to the old Jack. Good old Jack. There isn't one.
Friend Jack.
There isn't one. I would just like to say it's just the fact that it was in Whitechapel. It sent me off down a little tangent for a few hours.
I can imagine you there looking through your computer and clicking on site going, where's Jack and the Bell?
No, Jack and the Bell's got to be in there somewhere, but no, there is no link there apart from the fact that it's in Whitechapel. It had been there for a long, long time as well. The premises in Whitechapel Road, they've been there since 1738, but their history actually goes back a lot further than that. Mm-hmm. It ceased trading in 2017, so it went for a long, long time.
Well, yeah.
This foundry, and it's done some incredibly famous bells, Big Ben being one of them. The Liberty Bell.
Right.
That was made there. They had did the September the 11th Memorial Bell.
Yep.
They did the Olympic Bell.
What was that, for the London Olympics?
Yep. They did
right.
the Diamond Jubilee bells.
So bells for all occasions then. Bells are us, they were like, weren't they?
Bells are us. Yeah, these are like the master bell makers. And if you want a bell, then that's kind of where you would go to. And actually, the Whitechapel bells could be found pretty much
anywhere, can't they?
Loads of churches. They really were worldwide.
Yeah, if you wanted a proper bell, you got it from Whitechapel.
Yeah,
if you wanted a hardcore bell. And I've just found out as well, my IQ elf has just forwarded me a message saying that the Houses of Parliament, the Big Ben Tower, if you want to go up and have a look at the thing, it's actually closed until 2021, obviously due to the refurbishment. So when they're finished, they will resume.
Oh, cool. We'll have to make.
If you go to Parliament UK website, you can find details of how to go and have a look.
Wow. Maybe we'll have to arrange a trip.
Yes, a road trip.
A little trip. Now, Big Ben.
I do believe though it's only stairs going up.
Well, yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah, it says like 9 billion stairs you have to.
Oh, well, maybe we won't be doing that then. I might not make it. 9 billion stairs later. Excuse me, I'm a bit coffee tonight. And Big Ben first chimed on July the 11th in 1859. The crack made it fall silent for 4 years, and then then it was fine. They sorted it out, and it was fine. But it has been there have been even other times it has fallen silent. So in 2007, it was out for repair, so they shut it off then, and then again in 1976. I got that completely the wrong way around there, in chronological order, didn't I?
You're time travelling.
I'm time travelling backwards and forwards all over the place. Oh dear. Yeah. Big Ben's chimes to the country during a New Year's Eve radio broadcast. Famous Big Ben's chimes at the strike of midnight on New Year's Eve. Well, it's recorded at the moment. That was first broadcast in 1923.
Right.
Yeah. And in 1932, during the King George V's Christmas broadcast, it was chimed as well, struck, whatever the terminology is of that.
Yep.
Yeah? Yeah, honestly, this is really important, having a bell chime, obviously.
Well, of course it is. It's the nation's bell, isn't it?
It's the nation's bell. That's it. It's quite interesting, though, because if you want a science experiment, you can tell the difference between the speed of light and sound by listening to Big Ben's chimes.
Yes, because if you're sort of at the base of the tower, isn't it, and you hear it, and the people that hear it, that listen to it on the radio, which I believe the microphone is actually up closer to the bell, the people on the radio will hear it before you do. Only sort of microseconds, but yeah, it is certainly
because if you're at the base, you'll hear it 1/6 of a second.
Yeah, something like
after
that.
The bell struck.
Apparently so. Fascinating fact.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now there is a leg.
So we're going to do that. We'll have it striking. Richard holds the microphone up to the bell. Kerry, you can be at the base, and I'll put my feet up at home and listen to it.
Through the radio. Right. There is a legend that if the bell rings 13 times, then the lions in Trafalgar Square will come to life. I couldn't find the reasoning behind that, or where that came from, or any other information other than there is this legend. Yeah. There have been links, or there have been occasions, should we say, where it has rung 13 times.
Right.
Obviously, the lions in Trafalgar Square didn't come to life.
No, because they're quite big lions, those statues.
Yeah.
Now, in 1892...
Is that what happened in Ghostbusters, then? Because they were big. Well, okay, they're not lions. They were big dogs, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
so
no.
maybe Big Ben rang 13 times then, and that's how they got the dog.
Okay. Can I go back to my 1892 occasion? I'm a little bit baffled by what to say about that. Now, there was a most curious coincidence with regards to the death of the late Duke of Clarence. It is as follows. There is, it seems, a superstition that when Big Ben, the clock of Westminster, strikes irregularly at midnight, evil will befall the royal family within 3 months. At 12 o'clock on the night of November the 14th, the members of a political club within a stone's throw of the Houses of Parliament were astonished, this is a newspaper report by the way, were astonished to hear the quarter chimes sounding simultaneously with the hour strikes, and to note that Big Ben struck 13 times. The event was commented on, and the day being a critical one in the illness of Prince George. His name was, happily incorrect, associated with the evil omen. 2 months later to the very day, however, his elder brother died, Prince Albert Victoria. I know, right?
Yeah.
Now, there was another...
Yeah, I don't buy that.
You don't buy that? Well, there was another occasion.
No.
The clock struck 13 at midnight within a few days of Queen Victoria's death. That was in 1901.
Right.
And also, if it doesn't ring, for some reason, if it doesn't ring at all, then that's supposed to foretell fortune for the royal family. The last time it didn't ring was actually on Queen Elizabeth's birth.
What, the current Queen?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
They didn't.
That would be the
They
current
can't explain why, but it just didn't ring. And again, this is a newspaper
But it hasn't
report.
rung for since 2016, hasn't it? So
No. It's working. This occasion it just didn't. It's not that somebody's gone up there and stopped it.
Yeah.
This was just for no apparent reason. You know what I mean? So this, again, was a newspaper report from 1926. When Big Ben fails without just reason, an event of the utmost importance is about to happen. Certainly, all the experts who try to find the cause of Big Ben's peculiar conduct failed and described the incident as being due to outside interference. The happy event to the Duke and Duchess occurred a few hours later, which was the birth of Queen Elizabeth. So that despite the lack of logic in the contention, citizens of Westminster are convinced that great historical events are bound up with the future of the royal baby. Many of them declare that they can trace all big events in royal history to the idiosyncrasies of the great clock. I love the way they put things. I love it. So, yeah, whether or not this is true, whether or not it's just coincidence of how the minutes and seconds fall, so it strikes 12 at midnight, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, it throws an extra one in or doesn't ring for whatever reason, I don't know. But people have linked
Well, it is going to fail
this.
occasionally. You know, the mechanism of the clock and stuff is still basically from the sort of 1800s. I mean, there's, you know, they just repair it and keep it running. You know, that's all part of the charm of the bell and the clock. So it is going to fail on occasion.
Oh, yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know enough about clock mechanisms and how that links to bells that... I've got a reoccurring cough, everybody. It's getting a bit worrying. Quick conspiracy theory.
I
So-
hope you're wearing your mask.
Of course.
Get to that side of the studio.
Oh, dear. Probably because I've been talking all day. So, I don't know, to be honest with you, whether or not it's just coincidence or whatever. It does seem a little strange that you can link it, but then you can find a correlation in most things if you look hard enough, right?
Well, of course you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course you can.
And whether or not the tolls of the bell of Big Ben are actually linked to the fortunes and misfortunes of the royal family, I would seriously doubt. But, hey, good story, right?
Well, it's a good story, and you know, and it's part of the tradition. You know, sort of countries, we build our traditions on these sorts of things, and that's just another one of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great.
Part of our rich tapestry.
I would kind of like to see the Lions of St Trafalgar Square? Where am I going? Of Trafalgar Square come alive, though.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
Like Ghostbusters
Especially when
style.
there's protesters.
Yeah, because that's where they usually go and protest, isn't it, Trafalgar
Obviously,
Square?
it depends what they're protesting about.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe that would be a bit fun.
Anyway, moving on.
Moving swiftly on before Paul gets himself into a political argument. Well, then I went...
What bell are we talking about next?
Let's talk about the Liberty Bell.
Is this the one that's not in National Treasure 2?
Yes, you're right. This is not the one that's in there. It's in the one that's in the first one. So, guys, you two have spent the whole weekend trying to find out about this bell. So you tell me about this one. Because this is American history, and I find American history very confusing.
In the movie, obviously, they were looking for the lost treasure of the Templar. And they had certain clues all the way through the film. And one of these clues involved the Liberty Bell. They didn't really go into the history or anything like that of the bell. They just basically said the basics where it was in Independence Hall in the bell tower, and then in 1876 it was changed for the Centennial Bell. And ever since then it's been in like a little pavilion type thing 100 yards away from the hall. So they didn't really go into too much details about it. It was just a case of there's the bell, it's casting a shadow at a certain time, and it's highlighted a brick in the wall, so they go to that, and there's a set of glasses where they can read the map on the back of the Declaration of Independence. As you do.
As you do, you know, great Hollywood tie-ins there, great. Now,
exactly.
Again...
There was a few gems in there.
Yeah, right? And you get to see it.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, it's quite a large bell, the Liberty Bell, and it is basically the symbol of United States freedom.
Yep.
It was commissioned in 1751 by the Pennsylvania Provincial Assembly to hang, as you said, in the new State House, which was renamed Independence Hall in Philadelphia. And it was cast in London by the Whitechapel Bell Foundry. And it was only £100.
Yeah, bargain. Cheap bargain.
That sounds cheap now, doesn't it? But I bet there was a lot of money back then.
Must have been, yeah. And they had a fair few problems with this one as well, didn't they? Because they had to recast it twice.
Yeah, they did. It was, it wasn't very successful. It was cracked by a stroke of the clapper. The clapper, I'm sure, is the clapper factor, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I suppose.
Couldn't have been a happy clapper.
Because like Big Ben and these sort of big sort of stationary bells, they don't swing to ring. You have a clapper that strikes them from the outside. And I think that is where the problem, because they usually, because as the bell sort of comes out to the bell bit at the end, it conicles out. That is quite a thin part of the bell, and that's where the clapper will actually strike it. And they can split on the first ringing if they're not cast correctly.
Well, they had to recast this twice before it was hung in the State House steeple. Now, can we remember who actually recast it for the Whitechapel people?
Is this where, what was it? Parson Stowe?
Plough.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
Plough and Stowe.
Yeah, I watched a movie this afternoon.
Yep, they're the ones that recast it, which is why their name is actually on the bell. It is actually on there, so that's who did that. Now, on it is also proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof.
Which is a Bible quote, I was surprised to find. It's from Leviticus, of all things, yes. So it sounds modern, but I didn't realise it would have come from that far back from the Old Testament.
Oh, you see, they do like to bring religion into it occasionally. Now, the legend was that it rang on July the 4th in 1776, and it was rung to signal the Continental Congress adoption of the Declaration of Independence. This is actually untrue. It was actually rung 4 days later on July the 8th to celebrate the first public reading of that document.
Ah, right, I see. So it's when they drafted the document 4 days before, but and this is when they took it to the masses. Probably stood on the town hall steps in Philadelphia to read out the Declaration.
Exactly.
Yeah. The last time it was rung though was for George Washington's birthday, wasn't it?
Yeah. Now, it did get hidden at one point in 1977 when British forces entered Philadelphia, and it's actually hidden in Allentown in Pennsylvania church. And then when it was restored to the independence, it cracked again.
Oh, right. I think you meant 1777, but...
That's what I said, wasn't it?
No, you said 1977.
Oh, did I?
And I can't remember British forces.
All right, Richard. 1777 then. I'm sure you misheard me. I'm sure I said it right the first time. We'll find out on replay. Now, the name the Liberty Bell was first applied in 1839 in an abolitionist pamphlet, and then it was rung for the last time in 1846, where it was cracked irreparably, and then it was moved to that pavilion 100 yards away from the Independence Hall.
Yeah, because it's very famous for its crack now, isn't it? Whenever you see pictures and sort of stuff, it has quite a big crack in it, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now it's just on display, but it still holds the very big significance for the citizens of the United States, even to this very day. They
do seem to get very attached, should we say, to objects. I mean, we are attached to our Big Ben.
Yeah, we like our Big Ben.
I think, the American population are very patriotic.
Yeah,
most of them are patriotic. So that is a huge part of their history of independence. And, they do, hold that in high regard.
Yeah. Do you think, then, that we hold Big Ben in the same regard?
Well, I should like to think so. I mean, it's something that's always there, that's always with us. I suppose if somebody sort of suggested we should take it down because of whatever, the way sort of the world's going at the moment, it's going quite mad, there'd be quite an outcry.
Is it?
I mean, I'd certainly take to the streets.
I sort of disagree. I think people like it there because it's traditional. Mm-hmm. So, like, for New Year's Eve, the bell chimes on, on the midnight to see in the new year. And I think that's why we hold it in high regard, because it's part of our tradition, and we're a very traditional country. Where statues, for example, are held in more high regard because of what they represent, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You've got the image of a person, and they represent, I don't know, something great that this country done, like maybe VE Day, and other stuff during the war periods. And it's something that we are proud of. We're very proud of our history.
I mean, we have had a civil war in the UK, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah, 1642.
And I don't know American history against British history, but that was about bringing down the monarchy, wasn't it? And establishing Parliament.
Yes, and basically, yeah, you're right. It was sort of like to take a lot of control away from the monarch, his right to raise taxes and stuff, and put it more in charge of Parliament, the elected Parliament, members of Parliament, and that is a very basic sort of guide to the start of the English Civil War. I mean, and civil wars are quite complicated in themselves, but that is sort of like the basics of it,
And how does that differ in regards to the American Civil War?
American Civil War, again, that was sort of like the nation was not that old at the time. I mean, forgive me for Americans listening to this, but it's a more to do with state rights. I mean, sort of like the southern part of the United States was very sort of rural, and their economy was very sort of rural, built on cotton basically, whereas the northern states were sort of very sort of industrial. And it was to do with state rights. I mean, sort of the North I think the South thought they were being controlled more from the North than sort of like the South being able to govern themselves, be more autonomous. That is sort of, again,
I thought it was about winning independence from the English.
No, that's the American Revolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the American Civil War was a lot later. It was started in 1861, lasted for 4 years.
The one I'm thinking, the independence one was 1770.
Yes, and that was the famous cry of that was no taxation without representation. Yes, that was to kick the English out.
Mm.
Oh. So then, do we think then there's a difference for them? Because they're fighting, like they say, it's their independence, isn't it? Whereas we kind of don't see our civil war as independence per se. It's like just a fairer system, isn't it?
It's a redistribution of power, sort of governance. Was sort of our civil war was basically sort of built around that. It was sort of like to take so much, the divine right of kings and stuff was very much called into question.
Bearing in mind the king was supposed to have been chosen by God. Either way, whatever way you want to look at it, excuse me, whatever way you want to look at it, both countries have got a bell that is very symbolic of representation of fact of their situation, their culture, their history, their independence. You know what I mean? So America's got the Liberty Bell, and we've got good old Big Ben, and the conjoining factor of that is they were both cast at the Whitechapel Foundry, which unfortunately you can't go and visit.
And their bells are also, and these are the original items, so they're very tangible. You can ring them, you can sort of, and there's the sound. And the people back then, that would have been the same sound you hear now. So, it is a very tangible link to that very important part of history.
Exactly, in both sides. Now, that is the two iconic bells from either side of the pond. We could have gone into others, but we're going to stick with those two. In part 2, we're going to actually go more into the paranormal side of things with bells. So join us right after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK radio network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK radio network. Now, before the break, we went into a bit of the historical side of bells, and we looked at, the mythology surrounding some of the great big bells that we know and love. This part 2 is going to delve more into the ghosty side and the more paranormal side, and some of the accounts that have had of where bells have been quite, how should we say it? Prevalent?
Yeah, in sort of stories and folklore, isn't it?
Yeah, we go more into the ghost story side of it. Now, Beeling's house was actually a scene of a classic story of paranormal bell ringing in 1834. Anybody want to take the lead on this one?
Okay, the occupant was it was a mansion, and at the time it was Major Edward Moore, and he was there from 1771 to 1848, and he was a fellow of the Royal Society, and he wrote a letter to the local paper, about his experience. Basically, on February the 2nd, 1834, Major Moore was returned home after going to church, and he was told by, I'm assuming, his staff that the dining room bell had rung 3 times, and it happened subsequently throughout the day. And the next day as well, it happened, and it just kept going on and on and on. So, yeah, go on, Richard, I'll let you carry on.
Well, yeah, and as I say, and the next day, and he went out, and on returning shortly after, about 5 o'clock, he learned that all the bells in the kitchen were violently ringing, and as he was being told this, a peal of bells was heard from the kitchen. I mean, what was going on down there? I mean, this certainly sort of rings, you know, excuse the pun, of you know, the servants' bells actually ringing, which they would have been attached to all the other parts of the houses by various wires and stuff like that. So quite what was going on. We,
I reckon people just having a laugh.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know so much. I mean, could this be sort of some sort of natural occurrence with vermin or stuff running around the house?
Well, it only seemed to attack. It only seemed to happen on the ones that were on the right, and these were the bells that were situated in the dining room, the drawing room, and over the dining room, an adjacent bedroom and 2 attics over the drawing room. So you've got levels there. So if it was vermin or something like that, surely it would affect it wouldn't just affect one area of the house. Maybe it would be all the house. I don't know. Yeah. And to happen at the same sort of time as well. It always happened between 3 and 5 o'clock.
And he always seems to have been out at the time, and he was informed by the staff when he returned, apart from the last time when he did witness this himself.
And his son witnessed it as well.
Mm-hmm.
His son did witness that as well. So, you know, it's one of those, isn't it? Now, the staff are obviously witnessing this and being a bit freaked out because obviously the man of the house is out. So they're not going to be in the rooms that... They were like, why is the bell ringing? Because they're not in. Mm-hmm. So we're all down here. So who's up there? You know, It's the equivalent of your front door ringing. You go down and answer it, and then it rings again, and you're thinking, there was no one there. I'm going to go and re-answer the door, and then it ringing again, and it happening at the same sort of time every day.
That's well annoying, that is.
It would be freaky, wouldn't it?
Probably the paranormal equivalent of knockdown ginger, isn't it?
Yeah. I think if it was your doorbell, you just instantly go, bloody kids.
That's right.
If only we did have like servant bells like we used to have in the olden days, it'd be quite nice, wouldn't it, to ring a bell and then someone come at your beck and call.
Well, you do. You've got a tea bell. Yeah, see, no one comes to that.
Nobody. They don't even react to that now. I've even had to really ring it extendedly, and they still don't. Now, it did happen once when the Major and his son were sitting down to dinner, and the bell in the next room was rung, as if it had been pulled, but no one was near it at the time. During the meal, 5 bells previously affected rang every 10 minutes, and then continued to do so at longer intervals. When the 6 servants, they had 6 of them, were actually at dinner in the kitchen until about 7:45, then it all stopped. So it's happening sort of like, it is becoming an unexplained phenomenon now, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems to be happening at quite a regular occurrence and around the same sort of time.
And it's quite violent as well, because on one occasion, when Major Moore went to the kitchen, the same 5 bells rang again, very violently, and one of them hit the ceiling.
Right.
Now, Major Moore did investigate this. He was convinced that it was not done by humans. There was nobody up in the rooms pulling the bell cord, basically.
Okay.
I have no idea how far they investigated, so you can't rule out maybe vermin or, I don't know. There might be an explanation for it, but he never found the cause of it. And on the 2nd of March, 27th of March, it just stopped as quickly as it started. So it kind of was put down to a poltergeist.
Yeah,
I wonder if he sacked someone, and that's when it stopped.
Well, there is that possibility. We don't know.
Yeah. You could put that down to poltergeist sort of behaviour, couldn't you? Phenomena.
You could. They had no other phenomena. I would like to say that. It was only the bell ringing.
Yeah.
That would drive you crazy, though.
Oh, yeah.
It's like an alarm keep going off, and you're like, for God's sake, will you stop ringing the goddamn bell?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it would fit in with poltergeist as well, because it was still 1834 when it stopped. And going from, like, looking at other poltergeist cases, they last normally around 18 months before they stop. So this just could be a short-lived poltergeist.
Yeah.
Case.
It is a curious little tale that I found in Spooky Isles online magazine. So if you want to go over and check the full story, you need to go over to Spooky Isles, because that's where I found that little one.
That little gem.
That little gem of a story. Fascinating little story, as I say. I don't know any more details than that, really, except it was a bell-ringing phenomena that occurred. You could say it was a poltergeist. We would need more details, I think, to call it.
Yeah, taking it on face value, it could appear to be a poltergeist, but without having to investigate it and be there to put our modern minds to it, it's going to be really difficult.
But it's just a good old story, isn't it?
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, it's sort of nice. I should imagine, and if the hall still stands, that's a good thing to tell the tourists as they're being shown round. Oh,
most definitely. Now, there are many, many accounts, and we, going back to Richard's road trip, or our road trip, when we went to Dunwich, there are said to be bells in the sea. There's actually quite a big link to the bells in the sea, and we came across this a little bit when we did the show on ancient mariners.
Yeah, mariners' tales, sort of bells in the sea, and particularly with Dunwich, and it's not just Dunwich, along that stretch of the English coast, it's very erosive. I mean, and originally Dunwich was a medieval port, and back in the 1500s, it was actually the third biggest town in England, and literally over the course of, well, they say one night, but I do doubt that, but over the course of relatively short period of time, the whole town was actually washed into the sea. And one of the stories that surfaced from this, and they say that on stormy nights you can still hear the bells ring from one of the submerged churches that are just off the coast, And again, I've come across this story from another place. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but again, it's just up the coast. Again, a part of the UK that is very affected by erosion, and there was a church quite close that eventually sort of succumbed to the sea, and that has a story of hearing the bells ring on stormy nights.
But this is quite common around our whole coastline. We found accounts down in Gwynedd, Suffolk, Blackpool, and basically there was loads and loads. I've just picked out a few areas around the coastline. But this is like a really common thing. Now, some go to shipwrecks where the ship's bell is what you hear, with the tide. Sometimes it's like Richard says, where a town has gone and the bell is ringing because of the tide and whatnot, and that's what you can still hear. I've never heard it. I've never come across this in, like, when I've been out investigating of a ghostly bell. I've not had that. But then having said that, I've not been out specifically to try and hear that. And they're always now, if you do hear them, it's a sign. It's taken as a sign of bad luck or as a warning of a storm or a disaster because of the link to how the bell got there in the first place, as it were. Do you know what I mean?
It's sort of like a warning tale. You know, that you can certainly sort of like get that, and generally bells on ships and stuff, and coastal bells would have been rung during times of a tempest rising and stuff like that. So if you did hear a bell, you know, you would be wary.
Mm-hmm. Now there is a
again, you know, ships also used to ring the bell during fog. Really thick fog, and that was basically because of the theory that in the fog you had demons and monsters and stuff like that, so the bells would ward off the evil spirits.
And notify anybody near you that you're there.
Well, there's that too, but
because you don't want a bit of bad luck by hitting another boat in the fog.
For the point of the show.
Let's take the prosaic out of it, shall we? But no, you are right.
Yeah, it was that as well.
Well, of course it was. Yeah, of course it was. And so the link between water and bells is actually quite prevalent. And when we look at the paranormal, the link between water and the paranormal is quite prevalent, isn't it? You know, so it kind of... They all kind of go together.
Yeah, it does, but it also has this sort of thing because bell, you know, and it gives it that sort of mystery, because if you take a bell underwater and ring it, it won't ring. It won't make a sound. You know, so you've got that sort of, these are spectral bells that are underwater that you can hear. So you've got that as well, sort of behind it.
I've just got visions of thousands of people now listening to the show and rushing off to run the bath.
Ringing their little bell under it.
I did just think that. I did think, I didn't know that. I'll have to try that. See if that theory's true.
I thought that, actually.
Did you?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Richard, next week we're going to come on and we're going to, tell
you take your little bell then.
I'm going to take my little tea bell and run a bath and see if I can get it to ring underwater.
Yeah. Okay.
See if that theory holds true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See if that theory holds water.
Because I don't know, actually, thinking about it. It seems logical.
I
was going to say, it sounds logical that it could ring underwater. But then again, you muffle a bell, so when you can't ring, it kind of goes donk, doesn't it? So like, if I ring it freely, because I'm now trying things out, I might go and get a bowl of water in a minute. If you ring it like that, that's me. But then if I do that, it doesn't ring.
Sound does carry in water, doesn't it? I mean, that's how the whales communicate.
Yeah, but that's through pitch and stuff, and that is made in a different way.
Yeah, but
you get pitch in a bell as well.
But the point is...
Well, that's your experiment after the show, Kerry.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but if you hold the bell bit and then I ring it, it doesn't ring.
Yeah.
So wouldn't water muffle the bell? So maybe Richard's right. We're gonna have to test that theory out.
Woe betide if I'm right.
But just had a thought. Right at the top of the show, we said that danger comes from water because Vikings would have travelled in and they would have been like the marauding things. So the link between water and bells is quite prevalent in that respect, isn't it? So maybe that myth has grown up because danger comes from the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Not.
I think if it does turn out to be false and Richard's wrong, I think as a forfeit he should get that tattoo that he posted up on social media the other day.
The Ouija board one.
Well, the Ouija board one, yeah. Yeah, okay.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I've already had it done.
Yeah.
That was the picture.
No, you wish. Bless you. Bless you. Not quite so defiant as that, are you, darling?
Well, you caused quite a stir on social media.
You certainly did with that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the topic.
Let's leave my pecs out of this. Yeah. Come on, off you go.
Now, we always seem to come back to this place in some form or other, and we can't seem to get away from it. It's one of the most iconic ghost stories or hauntings or paranormal activity or whatever way you want to look at it. which is Borley Rectory. Now, we keep trying. I keep nagging one of my good friends who wrote the definitive Borley guide to Borley Rectory to come on and tell us all about it, because it is a soap opera of a place with so much paranormal in there. And obviously the Harry Price is linked into this as well. But there was a very characteristic phenomena at Borley, which was bell ringing. And again, this is where we have the line of internal bells that were in the kitchen passage because to ring for the servants kind of scenario. And that, before we get into the Borley Rectory story bit, let's take a look at that. We're talking about a time in history where it is very privileged to have that set up. And very class definitive. So you've got your servants and you've got your masters, correct?
Yep.
And they're basically, you're at their beck and call. You ring a bell, you go running. The master wants something. Now, that in itself is, when we talk about using a bell to call spirit forward, again, it's that thought, isn't it, of the majority of people were poor people, and there was a lot of people in servitude than anything else. It was sort of like the middle ground. So you had the very poor people working in the factories and the smelly jobs and all that sort of thing. Then you had people in, like poor people but in servitude, and then you had basically the middle upper class. There wasn't really a middle class then, but the upper class who could afford to have a servant. And actually, it was a mark of class, wasn't it, if you could have a servant and how many servants you had.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, yeah, it would have been a status, yeah.
So when we talk about calling spirit forward, as a majority class, you would have been used to that call to action. Because of a bell. So I do think we shouldn't overlook the use of a bell in regards to maybe trying to get some activity. I think maybe it's a useful tool, because that is something that for a long time, would have been a call to action. So, master wants us, we need to go, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way you've broken that down. Yeah, sort of thinking about it. Yeah, a call to action. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it, to be fair. But yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
So I do think maybe it's a tool that we could use, you know, in not just seance work. You know, it's like, oh, ring the bell and blah, blah, blah. But if we were ringing the bell in that kind of environment when we're doing an investigation, if we're in that kind of location, then it could be a good use of a trigger.
Yeah, it'd be true. Yeah.
I don't know many teams that would do that. I'm sure there are out there. I'm sure after the show goes out, we'll have hundreds of people go, yeah, I use a bell.
You get out there are people that sort of use these cat balls as trigger objects, you know, but that's just to observe a possible effect, isn't it?
Yeah. But to get, I don't know, it's a thought. I don't know. You might have, as I say, we might have hundreds of teams afterwards going, oh, yeah, we've tried that, we do that. And it might only work in certain locations where, like manor houses who had this kind of system in place and stuff like that. But anyway, Borley Rectory was one of these places that had these call to action bells, basically. Now, they were connected by wires to almost every room in the house. So it is a signal to domestic staff that you want a hot water, you want serving, you want helping
someone at the front door.
Helping to be dressed. Yeah, bells were at the front door as well, you know. Apparently, in Victorian times, you needed someone to help you get dressed. It was quite... If you look at any of Lucy Wolseley's programmes, the lovely historian, Lucy, good friend of mine, I wish. I talk about her as if I know her. I don't, but we'll pretend we do. She does some of these dress-ups, doesn't she? So she shows you how involved each process is. And as Victorians, it was quite an involved process with tying up corsets and stuff.
Especially for the women, wasn't it? And the corset does spring to mind, doesn't it? God knows how they used to get into them.
God knows. There were actually 3 entrance halls that required bells too at Borley.
Right.
Now, for most of the time, it was just 1 or 2 of the bells that rang, in regards to this phenomena that happened there. But on the night when the Marks Tay spiritualist circle arrived at the rectory, it all booted off, basically, should we say? How can we say that it actually booted off?
All kicked off, yeah.
Kicked off. Yeah.
Kicked off. There were 30 bells in the kitchen passage, clanging wildly by themselves. The rector said that the wires of all but 3 of the bells had been cut in an effort to stop the ringing, but that hadn't stopped it. That must have driven them crazy.
You can imagine sort of saying, look what you've done.
Yeah, damn it.
The old Marks Day and Spiritualist Church has got a lot to answer for.
It seems to, doesn't it?
Incidentally, and Marks Day is just down the road from me as well.
How much time difference was there between that story and the story of the nuns?
I think it all kind of merges into one, to be fair. I think
Because
it's all...
I personally think that the ghost story of Borley was a cover-up because of a relationship between the priest at the church and one of the nuns.
Right.
So they invented this story to divert attention away from what they were getting up to. That's what I believe was the basis of all the stories.
No, because too much phenomena was actually witnessed there.
Those types of stories are quite common, you know, sort of like the monk and the sort of like the nun, you know. It is quite a prevalent story across the whole country, you know. It's quite sort of like a folklore sort of thing when wherever you sort of get a spectral monk or nun for that matter, that story is usually attached to it. I think it's a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
I mean...
I don't buy it, that, personally. I mean, I've been there quite a lot. I've never experienced anything.
But a lot of people have experienced stuff when they've gone there. And, I mean, bearing in mind, we haven't got the rectory anymore. That's not there anymore. It's gone. Gone and down.
Well, the ruins, the what do you call it, the footings for the building's still there. And you can see them on satellite images.
Yeah, but...
if you know where to look. The church, on the other hand, I get more hits, paranormal-wise, on the site of the old church and not the church that's there.
Yeah.
Because apparently the old church was built slightly to the side, wasn't it? Sort of.
There's a
you've got it on
between the two.
Okay. Well, one of the guys that was part of this spiritualist circle went down and was looking at the clanging bells and said, if some invisible person is present and can hear these words, please stop the bells ringing. Please stop the ringing for a moment. And apparently they did. They stopped ringing.
Oh, well.
Could it just be the bell puller going, what was that you said? Couldn't be the bell going.
But it's a strange one, isn't it? Because there is this backstory to Borley with the soap opera that plays out. It is an incredibly fascinating story. Whatever angle you want to look at it, some people say it's manifestation from Marianne. Some people say it's just a real live and kicking poltergeist story. Some of it's faked by Harry Price himself because he wants the notoriety. You know, we know Harry was a bit of a media whore. You know, he liked the publicity, didn't he, old Harry?
Oh, he didn't shy away from it, did he?
No, he didn't shy away from it. But the bell ringing thing, I think it's easy to dismiss because it's easy to fake.
Yes, of all the sort of phenomena, and especially as we sort of spoke about earlier, you know, these, you know, you only need sort of, you know, to interfere with the wire along its course to the actual bell by attaching another wire or piece of string, then you will get the effect, exactly the same effect.
Exactly, and I think that's the problem. And because all of these cases we're talking about, we can't check.
No.
Can't go and check, because unless it was happening now, then you could. But at the time, we have to rely on testimony of what was done at the time. Now, unfortunately, there was a situation where a guest stumbled on an arrangement that could have provided a clue as to where this, air quote, invisible person was actually located.
Mm-hmm.
The guy went out into the rain to get some coal, and he saw a piece of string half hidden in the ivy, and he thought it'd be useful to tie his raincoat around it. He gave the string a sharp tug and to pull it from the nail on where it was hung, and the house bells began to ring. So effectively, basically, there's a wire, house bells then start ringing because you pull it. So somebody could have been outside pulling that and causing that phenomena. You can't, unless you ripped the house apart while that phenomena was going on, you're going to just go, hang on, we're all here, we're all present, and all of a sudden the bells are ringing.
Right, you probably wouldn't think of looking externally, because as the bells are internal to the house, you would think, let's go and have a look around the house. And it wouldn't be too long before you could ascertain there's nobody else in the house apart from the people present. So, yeah.
And, the same guy, Ian, who was Mariana's son, actually went into the attic. And in the attic, he found that it was really quite easy to make the bells ring. And you've got to remember, these houses are not... You get rats and mice and all sorts of things in the loft, in the attic area. So if you've got these moving around, they could easily... And they love a bit of a wire, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Something to chew on. Sort of keep their teeth down. Rodents' teeth can continually grow, don't they? So that's why they sort of tend to gnaw at a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they have to gnaw. Right? So,
and the point of investigating is to rule that sort of stuff out.
It is to rule all that stuff out.
You always go to the logical explanation first and then try and rule that out. And then whatever you've left with must be what happened.
Yeah, because thinking about the way these bells operated, and during the time, everyone would have known how they operated. It wasn't advanced; it was very basic technology. You had a lever, you pulled, it pulled on a wire, and it would pull the bell, and everyone would have known this as well. It's like today, you sort of press a doorbell, and and it rings somewhere else in the house. And to the uninitiated, it is probably you'd find it quite difficult and how to work that process out. But back then, everyone would have known how this worked.
And it is quite rudimentary. In all honesty, it's not a complicated, well crafted, I would say, necessarily piece. It's hidden in the walls. You could kind of easily get it to ring. I know it's very easy to jump to the assumption that it was faked just for effect, because they said it was haunted. They've got people from spiritualist churches, they've got a lot of interest from Harry Price, blah blah blah, coming in. We're not saying that there wasn't any phenomena. We're saying that this is one of the ones you have to be very careful with, because of the easiness to create a situation, whether by means or by external means, like a rat or rodent or something like that. You've got to remember, houses in those days, they were very wooden, wood panelling, and so there was gaps behind things.
Going back to the sheer fact that this is why we investigate things, it's more logical that someone faked it, given the evidence that we've got in front of us now. We could quite easily say, well, yeah, that could be faked. So let's use that as the assumption until someone comes along and goes, well, actually, I can prove that it wasn't faked because here's the evidence. So always jump to the logical conclusions first. But a lot of teams don't do that. I know that.
But you've also got to remember the time that this was looked at as well. Do you go in with a biased perspective? Right, let's go down that route. We've said time and time again, you can't go in with a biased perspective. You have to keep your belief systems in check whenever you're investigating something, because that can cloud your judgment. So if you go into any situation, whether it be a seance bell or a bell that's part of the building or whatever, and it rings allegedly by its own volition, your bias could make you jump to the assumption that that's wrong because of spirit activity.
Yeah,
or poltergeist
absolutely.
or something.
I think you've got to, as an investigator, you've got to prove beyond reasonable doubt that it is paranormal. I don't really like using the term paranormal, as you know, when I come to having my experiences. If I can't explain something, to me, I class it as unexplained and not paranormal. Because because I can't explain it, don't mean to say that in 5 years' time someone else is going to come along and say, well, actually, this is what happened to you. So, you know, all these people go, oh, yeah, I had something paranormal happen to me. This is what happened. I could be sitting there going, thinking to myself, well, actually, what you're explaining is something completely logical. It's happened to me. I know what that was. So, but they'll still go on about it being paranormal when it wasn't, because they can't explain it. So, at the end of the day, when people go on about paranormal stuff, it's really unexplained. And paranormal.
No, I am with you on that. I do think it is about it is about being critical thinking, isn't it? Critical minded, and being skeptical in the paranormal field isn't a bad thing. You know, I think people kind of get a bit scared if you get a skeptic along or somebody who is more critical minded, and take it almost offensively if they say, well, hold on a minute, it could be this, right? When producing evidence or what they think is evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we see that all the time. You know, what do you think of this photograph? Well, I actually think this, this and this. I can kind of see that being a logical assumption rather than it being a ghosty, scary spirit. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen plenty of pictures that people have sent me and said, what do you think? And then as soon as I remove my hands from my head, I then subsequently tell them what I think. But, you know, it's sometimes, though, you've got to be tactful as well.
Yeah, you do have to be tactful. But, like, if you're given a piece of video footage, it's so difficult to tell, isn't it, from that video footage of all the conditions that was there on the night, whether or not there's wind flow, you know. You kind of have to be there to experience it, which is why if you capture something that you think is paranormal, it's always worth going back to the location to see if you can recreate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've done that countless times.
Yeah. Because we, you know, and then 9 times out of 10 we'll go, that's a strong possibility it was that. We got caught up in the moment at the time. It's very exciting, don't get me wrong. It's like, oh, wow, fantastic. Do you know what I mean? Look at what we've caught. But to go back over it and re-look at it, which in this case, with the Borley Rectory situation, you know, they thought they got a logical explanation for that. Okay, well, maybe that one was fake. But when they re-looked at that, they said he did find a string. Loads of other people did as well. The wire was bent and was pulled down, and there was loose wires in the ceiling. Now, that led to an accusation of it being faked. However, there were lots of loose wires hanging down, lots of disused ones. Where he was actually to do with the knives and shoes, not the fuel. So he wasn't in that area, so it didn't link to that. So that's wrong. So trying to back up the fact that it wasn't faked? It was just, yes, there was that, but we know what that is because that links to that. And there's lots of unused wires and it's been changed over the years and that doesn't actually attach to anything. So it couldn't be the bell ringing that caused, you know, when he yanked that, it wasn't the bell ringing, that was coincidence. Another bell just happened to ring at the time we pulled the wire, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I mean? So it becomes very difficult when you're looking at something in retrospect to actually work out what was going, because you've only got witness statements and the testimony of what happened at the time, particularly with this case, because we haven't got anything else other than witness statements and maybe odd photographs of the actual building. We haven't got all the nooks and crannies and the ins and outs of the rectory, only what people have said about it. It being such a famous case, it's been picked apart and pulled apart, and we can look at the history and we can look at the characters involved and we can make assumptions on that. But in regards to whether or not it happened or not, remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mariana was very keen to kind of explain how difficult it would be to fake the bell ringing. She said the wires in the rectory ceiling were very high, very, very high, and even on a stepladder you couldn't reach them. The windows, even on a stepladder, couldn't put curtains up or anything like that, and there were wires all around the top, but the bell pulls had all been disconnected. So that if that's the case, then there's no reason for the bells to be ringing. My argument to that would be it wouldn't take an awful lot. This is a woman at the end of the day, no disrespect to women at all, but look at the time frame. We wouldn't go up ladders back then.
Not nice, is it?
We wouldn't be doing stuff like that. So
not ladylike.
No. So, and if you kind of could easily still fake it, just because she wouldn't get up a ladder doesn't mean to say somebody else wouldn't have done it, or it wasn't done in some other way. So she was very defensive about that, because she said that the bell ringing phenomena had gone on several times and didn't like the idea of being accused of being fake.
Yeah,
so for her, this was a true phenomena.
There was a lot of rumours about the women in Borley, and I think climbing ladders really wouldn't be too high on their not-to-do list.
But there are more bells ringing scenarios. Now, I can't sit here and say that the haunting of the Borley Rectory was real or not. I kind of think something was going on there.
Yeah, there must be a basic sort of premise for the attention. Even back then, we can sort of look at the people back then and saying, well, they're probably a bit more sort of ignorant and stuff. But no, there was probably something occurred or occurs over a period of time. Quite what we will never know.
Never going to know, but apparently it didn't just happen in their time, it happened previously as well with the previous occupants. In Harry Ball's time at the rectory, there seemed to have been ringing of the large outside bell that was on a completely different mechanism as well. Now, it rang for several moments. The rector burst into the bedroom, a bit upset about it all. The bell had obviously upset him. And he was saying, did you hear it? Did you hear it? For goodness sake, don't tell anybody. I hate this sort of thing being talked about. Promise me you won't tell anybody. But it was spectacular, wasn't it? So it's almost like he wants to quash the fact that there was strange phenomena going on around the rectory. I find the whole story completely fascinating, to be fair, with Borley. And having been there, it's the perfect setting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you sort of go to the place. I mean, it is in the sort of back and beyond, and it is in a very sort of atmospheric part of the county anyway, And as I've always said before, I love that sort of part of Essex, all along the Essex-Suffolk border. Again, I always come back to it. It's a threshold. It seems to be a threshold area, if such a place can actually exist.
But surely, if you didn't want people to jump to the conclusion that it was spirit ringing the bells, why would you make such a song and dance about it? You could have just said, oh, yeah, I was playing with the bells last night, if anyone asked. But if no one asked, don't say nothing. There's so much. I just think it was a cover-up, to be fair. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you stick to your opinion. Now, I do know where the outside bell resides now. It is in the care of one of my good friends. I've seen the bell.
Oh. Yes.
So's Richard.
Does it still ring?
Yeah.
Not underwater, apparently.
And not on its own volition.
Yes, no, we're very fortunate to sort of see a few bits and pieces of Borley Rectory, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know whether you picked up anything from Kerry. But...
Oh, no, we're not going to get into that now because I can't remember. Can't remember what I was feeling at the time when I saw those. It was a while ago now. All I know, I was absolutely fascinated and blown away.
She struggles to remember what movies bells were in. So.
Well, yeah.
I struggle to remember a lot of things these days. I'm permanently in a permanent state of exhaustion, I think, these days, than anything else.
Well, with my day job, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I know, it's very tough at the moment. But bells, right, okay, so let's go back to the concept of bells in a paranormal investigation. Now, in the spiritual world, good old spiritual world, we have something called ting-ting bells, right, which you can ping over people's or in people's auras to help cleanse them and energize various points, which brings up an interesting concept of frequency and vibration, right?
Yeah.
And when a bell rings, it does hit you in the soul, doesn't it? It hits you in the centre. You can feel it.
I can, yeah, I do agree with you there, Kerry. You know, sort of like that resonance a bell can make, you know. Well, it is known about in the medical field. I mean, sort of resonances and stuff. I mean, don't they use them to help people with kidney stones and stuff like that? And,
yeah,
you know,
they use sound waves to.
Yeah, they use sound waves. So there's certainly a precedent to it.
Exactly. So I definitely think it's an interesting concept to bring into your investigations. I mean, we talk about. I mean, there's a high occurrence these days of people taking singing bowls out onto paranormal investigations more than bells. You've got one.
I love my singing bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I suppose, is technically a type of bell, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, it works on resonation, doesn't it?
Yeah, resonant. It's just you have to you run the sort of your clack or whatever around the rim, don't you? Because I believe you can get crystal ones as well, can't you, Kerry?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. And the tone of those is just phenomenal. Depending on the crystal, depending on the size of the bowl and all the rest of it, you want to listen to some of them. You want a meditation that really, resonates, I think is the word. Yeah. A singing bowl meditation is phenomenal. Paul, you did when you was doing your experimentation with meditation, didn't you use sound at one point?
Yeah, we was using music and white noise and yellow noise and green noise and all that sort of stuff. Different noise frequencies.
Yeah, well, it certainly is something that, and as I said, it is sort of known about, you know, sort of, and certain sort of noise. And even if you listen to even something as sort of like relaxing music, can certainly send you into a altered state at times.
Yeah. Oh, no, I definitely agree that sound can have that effect. In regards to bells, that resonance that can create is quite phenomenal. Now, isn't there a theory? Oh, wasn't this Norman Fay? We'd have to get Norman on. I'm sure he was talking about resonances, various tone resonances played at a certain specific place around a church would create a specific chord that would open a portal.
I have heard about stuff like that, even going back to the Neolithic times, and there's sort of like there's always been theories about these barrows and like Stonehenge itself, that they were built to certain resonant sort of tones and stuff like that, you know, to amplify.
That theory's been going around for years and years and years. I mean, they even used that in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
Did they?
There you go.
Yeah, he walked up to the door and played his little pipe thing, didn't he? And the doors opened.
God, you remember details I've not...
Yeah.
It was the Gene Wilder one.
Right.
The older version.
Oh.
Yeah.
But,
and then the Oompa Loompa started.
Do you think then we're missing a trick with this? Do you think that we are missing a trick in the paranormal investigation world? Should we all be getting out our various toned bells and becoming bell ringers effectively to create a specific
there could be
resonance?
An argument for it. I mean, they've tried sort of white noise and stuff like that, and to varying levels of whether success or not is a correct term, but it always seems to be quite sort of hit and miss, and perhaps something more natural, you know, because...
I think because the Victorians were very big on this, and as we know, obviously, they faked a lot of the stuff. I think maybe some people would think that because they've tried it in the Victorian period, nothing happened, so they fabricated the activity. It doesn't work.
So it's undermined it, you mean?
Possibly, yeah. Just by the faking, it's possibly undermined it. But then, do we really want to go back over old ground?
I don't know. There certainly seems to be sort of like an interest in sound resonance. I mean, this is sort of slightly going off track, but it's sort of like, there's sort of people sort of like banding the theories around that this is how sort of very large blocks of stone would have been moved around sort of back in the day. Sort of like the pyramids are the obvious.
What, you mean like Pi paste?
Well, yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, and they were using resonance to levitate, or very sort of slightly, I mean, not sort of fly up into the sky, but to sort of, they would use certain resonances to make stones not so much levitate, but lighter to manoeuvre and stuff like that. But then
it's not just bells or frequencies like that has been quite prevalent in the paranormal. Even music. And I know, obviously, I'm going on about films as well. There was a couple of Disney films years ago that were centering around wizards and witches, and when they were doing their spells and stuff, they would sing the spell.
Yeah.
Because again, it was music and it was a bit of a rhythm, and so maybe there could be something in it. Because where would they have got that idea from?
Do you not think though, if that
sounds have power?
They do, but do you not think with the knowledge we have now scientifically, we would have been able to work out what resonances would have the biggest effect, like making a stone lighter that you could carry it? Because we've got technology now, and, particularly when you look at the processors and stuff like that, they'd be able to, I don't know, I'm not that au fait with stuff.
Yeah, you would think that, wouldn't you? Sort of like, if this was possible, you would have thought that...
we would have hit on it by now.
Yeah,
but don't the army have sound wave weapons?
Oh, I think they certainly have experimented with them in the past.
Yeah.
Even back in World War II, I think the Germans had some sort of sound, were sort of experimenting with sound to sort of like not so much kill individuals, but to desensitize someone.
Yeah. So the experiments have been done, and they're just not proved to be anything.
And I even think law enforcement actually used something. I mean, wasn't it you that was saying, Kerry, when you took your kids past the lake, and there was a certain house they didn't like, and it transpired that certain owners can buy these frequency things that teenagers can pick up on?
Yeah. Apparently that is a thing. I can't hear it.
Ones with bugs as well, so it's not only human. You get the ultrasonic bug thing, to get rid of mosquitoes and stuff.
And mice. You can get a high-pitched sound thing that gets rid of mice. Funny enough, going back to the teenage thing, my son has just hit 16. And I actually said to him the other day, we were talking about this, and I actually said to him, can you still hear it? The high-pitched sound? Because Leo can still hear that high-pitched squealy sound that he reckons is there, which I can't hear, so I don't believe them, right? Obviously. I think they're just trying to pull a fast one, because they go, oh, my ears. Right? And Ryder said, yeah, he can. So his eardrums haven't hardened, or he hasn't matured, because it is aimed at that age range, isn't it? To stop, it's a deterrent to stop kids from hanging around outside shops and stuff like that. It's what they're used for. So he hasn't quite grown out of that yet. But then again, he is hitting that age range which you don't want hanging around, in all honesty. And you are right,
Do they
Paul.
do one to get stupid people to avoid you?
Afraid not.
Oh, I don't know, yeah.
But you've also got to think about dog whistles. That's so high-pitched frequency we can't hear it with the human ear, but dogs can. I know we've come off the subject of bells, but it's still going on to that resonance and frequency, isn't it? But I still maintain that if there was that, the science would have maybe have worked out that a bit more?
Well, yeah, you would have thought so. I mean, I don't know quite. I don't know quite the answer to that question, but it's certainly something that is sort of known about. So,
well, I think whatever way you want to look at it, looking at resonances or bells or that kind of sound is very interesting and shouldn't be discounted in your investigations. It might be worth a try.
No, definitely, it's always worth a go.
Always worth a go. If it doesn't work, what you lost? Nothing. Whereas you might get great activity from using something very basic that everybody will resonate to. Even now, if you ring a bell, you look for where the bell's ringing.
Well, yeah, it's a recognisable sound. I mean, everyone knows what a bell sounds like, and you'll either behave like, oh, what's happened, or something. They're associated with emergencies, aren't they? The bell. You remember the old police cars and fire engines used to have bells on them.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah, rather than the sirens that they've got now.
Rather than the sirens. So, the bell is the sound of a bell is quite a sort of a multi-purpose sort of thing.
Nowadays, we kind of associate more with a celebration, bell ringing at weddings, or on a Sunday, a nice tune comes out of the bells. But the historical references and the way bells have been incorporated into people's lives throughout the historical references should not take you discounting it in a paranormal investigation. We've covered a couple of ghost stories tonight, Borley Rectory and Bealing Mansion. Take it or leave it, whatever you want to believe about that. Yes, they're in a more mansion kind of setting, which puts class into that. But how many manor houses do we investigate? And on that note, we'll leave you with that thought. Say good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
For businesses around the world, today isn't a restart, it's a rethink. That's why they're partnering with IBM. Retailers are keeping their systems up as millions of orders move online. Call centers are using IBM Watson to manage customer questions with AI. And solutions built on the IBM cloud are helping patients receive trusted information. Today we're rethinking how business moves forwards. Let's put smart to work. Visit ibm.com/smart/UK to learn more.